Hi everyone, I'm Rafael Agudo, Product Manager of Radarc, and today I would like to show you how to create a fully native cross-platform enterprise application using Radarc and Visual Studio. So let's see it. Well, the first thing that we're going to do is to create a new project. We'll click New Project. And as we have Radarc installed, we have a new project template called Radarc. We are going to select it. And we are going to give a name to our solution, Radarc Demo 1, and we're going to click OK. Now the Radarc solution wizard appears, and here is where we are going to define the architecture and the technology that we want to use to create our application. In this combo here, we can select the architecture. We can select a front-end backend architecture to create a backend of services exposing a REST API and OData and different frontends. We can select a backend architecture to create only a backend, frontend architecture to create only a frontend, or a standalone architecture to create a standalone application, for example, a Windows Phone 8 with a local SQL database. Once we have chose the architecture of our application, the next step is to define the technology that we want to use for each of the roles or the pieces of this architecture. As you will see, Radarc has a formula for each technology. In this case, we're going to use a backend formula for the backend. We're going to add a Windows Phone 8 frontend, and we're going to add another one for iOS, and a last one for Android. Alright, so now we are going to click Next, and now we have to configure the different formulas that we have selected previously. As you can see, for the backend formula we have some parameters here: the default namespace, the application name, an option to deploy to Windows Azure, the database server name, database catalog, and some parameters for the REST services and the framework that we are going to use for unit testing. We click Next, and here we have the Windows Phone 8 formula configuration. We have again the default namespace, we have the application name, and we have the backend URL. As I'm going to deploy the backend on Windows Azure, I'm going to put here the URL of my backend, flexbackend.cloudapp.net. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to click Next. For iOS, we have similar parameters. We have the bundle identifier, we have the application name, and we have the backend URL. We are going to use the same one as before. Oops, sorry. Let me delete that. Okay. And we're going to click Next. And the last one is Android formula. We have here the package, we have the application name, we have the backend URL. We're going to put the same here. We have the theme, we have the minimum required SDK and the target SDK. If you're familiar with the Android Studio, you will probably recognize this information because it is the same that Android Studio will require in order to create a project. So I think that's all. We're going to click Finish. And now you can see how Radarc is deploying the architecture that we have defined. You can see in the Solution Explorer how the different folders and projects are being created. Okay, so deployment is done. Let me resize this. And the architecture will be covered in depth later. But for now, let me collapse the solution tree and let's focus on this folder and this project called Domain Modeling. Here is where we are going to put the model that we are going to use to describe the application we are creating. And as you can see here, Radarc has already deployed the sample model for us. As you can see, it's a class model. We have two classes, one for arrivals and one for departures, with some attributes and their corresponding data types. But as you may guess, we can start from scratch using the toolbox. We can add new classes. We call that one airport. We will add some attributes, name, and maybe another one called location, for example. And of course we can add some relationships between the classes, but for now we will stick with the sample model to keep things easy. I'm going to delete this, and we will have again the sample model. One important thing to know here is that the application that we are going to create is 100% standard and native code with no dependency with Radarc. So if in the future we don't want to continue using Radarc, we can delete the domain modeling project and our application will compile and will run just fine. So let's create our application. For that we will open the Radarc generation panel. We can do this from here or from the menu. And as you can see, we have some options here. We can make a partial generation, or we can generate the whole application. We can select what model elements we want to generate, or what parts of the architecture we want to generate. We'll choose for now to generate the whole application. We can validate our model to check for errors, and we are going to click generate. And now in the output window you will see all the files that Radarc is creating. Just created the backend. Now it's creating the iOS frontend. And now the Android frontend. Well, now I have all my code ready to be compiled using Visual Studio for Windows Phone 8 frontend, Xcode for iOS frontend, and Android Studio for Android frontend. And now you will see all three applications in action. Okay, here we have the three frontends running, connected to a common backend. And as you can see, the three of them are following strictly the design and user experience guidelines of each of the platforms. You can see how we are using the native controls for Windows Phone 8, for iOS, and for Android. Well, I think that's all for now. If you want to know more about Radarc, visit our website at www.radarc.net or follow our Twitter account. Goodbye and thanks for watching.